There's a growing awareness and indeed acceptance that investors have a responsibility to drive change for good via the companies they invest in. How? Well, by using information from ESG frameworks to move towards the goals outlined by the UN in shifting to a low carbon economy and a fairer society. Well, I'm joined now by TAIMUR BAIG, Chief Economist and Managing Director at the largest bank in Southeast Asia, DBS. Now, TAIMUR, it's great to have you with us today. You've just written a paper on sustainability. What did you find? Do the economics of ESG add up?
Yes, they do. It seemed for a while that companies were just doing box-checking exercises or virtue signaling, if you will, by showing the rest of the world or their stakeholders that I'm doing this or that. I think a bunch of factors have aligned over the last few years, which make this entire exercise far more substantive than it has been in the past. Firstly, the global climate itself. That the higher frequency of natural disasters have galvanized people's sense of urgency to deal with environmental issues. At the same time, the gap that has widened between the haves and have-nots over the years became even more crystallized through the COVID pandemic that we have been living through the last couple of years. And that also has shown a very stark light on the inadequacy of business as usual. So whether it is climate change or the way we treat our workers or way we behave in the society that we live in, and by we, I mean the companies, it all has changed rather fundamentally. So it's no longer an issue of greenwashing or virtue signaling. Now companies feel that they're getting strong nudges from governments, from regulators, and stakeholders. Civil society has been very proactive in naming and shaming companies with inadequate practices. So all these factors have come together, and the financial environment, meaning the environment for green finance, or the fact that financial markets treat you differently if you have good or bad ESG practices, I think those developments have also aligned the interest of CEOs and CFOs to provide a sustainable, credible, legitimate framework for moving forward on the ESG side.
Well, what sort of feedback on this are you getting directly, almost off the record, TAIMUR, from investors, from institutional investors? Are they embracing these changes?
Oriel, there is no shortage of cynicism, and I think that's a good thing. I think there are a lot of investors out there who basically want the public sector to underwrite all their risks, and only then they would do green investment or investment into ESG. And then there are others who feel that the institutional framework, policy certainty is not quite there.
Are we seeing this in capital flows? Are we genuinely seeing more capital being allocated to the corporates, to the companies, to the sectors who are more active on this front, on the ESG front?
The data is not very persuasive yet. But the plans, the roadmaps are persuasive that, unless the companies are going to abrogate in all their promises, we will see substantial capital flowing in this area. But it also varies from region to region. What's happening in Europe and China is absolutely staggering, Oriel, in terms of actual money that is being put into urban regeneration, grid modification, electric vehicle, and all the peripherals around it, development of that, and of course the big area of clean energy. I sit here in Singapore and I have numerous friends who used to be oil and gas engineers and over the last decade or so have retooled their skill set to become engineers for wind turbines and solar, because that's where the money is. That's where the capital flows and the big investments are. So things are changing, even if the overall macro data is still not showing massive shift into ESG flows. I think the trends are very clear, and that's what we're trying to do here, right? We're trying to pick the early signals of where the things are going to move in the next 10, 15, 20 years.
TAIMUR, if I was to ask you to point me towards a leader in the space, geographically, who would you say that would be?
To me, it is really China. China is the largest emitter of pollution in the world, not on a per capita basis, not even close, but it's a country of 1 billion plus people, and it is largely the factory of the world. We basically have outsourced our pollution to China because they make everything that we consume. But China has become very serious. I think over the last 10, 12 years, the permanent blurry gray skies, the extremely poor air quality in Beijing, Shanghai have changed Chinese populations as well as the Chinese government's views. And they also think that in terms of pursuing an engine of growth, it can be property or financial markets. It has to be something chunky like climate change. And therefore, what they're doing, amazing progress. And also, there is no question the next generation of cutting edge, most efficient solar cells, electric batteries, all will come from China.